Okay, welcome to Hatha Yoga. My name is Ariele. For those who don't know me, I'm a physical therapist and a yoga teacher. And we're going to start seated today. I would love if everybody had a block and a blanket. I just folded my blanket and tucked it up underneath my bum. So that gives me the ability to sit up nice and tall. Invite in a full breath, let out a big sigh. And then I invite you to rest the crown of your head over your heart over your hips. Allow your elbows to be heavy, your arms to be heavy, palms to be face up or down in your lap. Consider if there's anything you can unburden yourself from in this moment for this practice. And just enjoy this next little bit of time that we have together. A couple more breaths in stillness. And with one of your next inhales, slowly bring your palms together over the heart. Full breath in. Big sigh out. Open your eyes. Let's start by rolling our shoulders a little bit today. It's going to be a well-rounded practice. We are, by request, going to get into thigh tightness and also a little bit of thigh strengthening. See if you can pull both shoulders up to your ears, hold them there for a moment, and then still turn your chin side to side. So this is a nice little fun activity. For many yoga teachers, they'll say things like, well, don't lock out your neck by bringing your shoulders up, but actually that's not what happens. So the joints of your neck can still move, can still rotate, can still flex and extend, even if your shoulders are up. In fact, you might feel a little bit more freedom to do that. So just a little side anatomy tip. Squeeze your shoulders back now and let your arms reach a little bit behind you. Big breath in, shoulder blades moving towards your spine. And then if you're sitting on something as I was, like your blanket, reach it out from underneath of you and go ahead and set your feet out in front of you. I call this position picnic sit. And we're going to do a little bit of cat and cow here just to warm up through the spine. So rock to the back of your sitting bones. Take a full breath in this rounded spine position. And then on your inhale, stick your belly forward, pull the shoulder blades forward, lift your chest. Exhale, rock back. You might turn your toes up towards the ceiling. Inhale, forward and squeeze. Exhale and rock it back. Connect to breath. You can go slower than me. You can go faster than me. And then last one. Bring your hands behind you. Feet still nice and wide apart. Start to drift your knees over to one side and then over to the other. So as your knees go side to side, if you feel any natural stopping point, you don't have to push through that. If anything feels uncomfortable, you don't have to push through that. If you're feeling a little bit stiff, walking your feet more forward will probably give you more freedom with this. And if you're feeling like you want a little bit more, I don't know, depth, it's not the right word, but intensity in the stretch, you can probably bring your heels in closer and your hips will go through a bigger arc of motion. As your knees go over to your right, spin your whole body in that direction, looking out over your right shoulder. We're going to do a little bit for our necks while we're in this position. So drop your chin, kind of trace it across your chest, side to side. And then inhale up to center, hands free if you feel comfortable. Wiggle your feet to the other side. I'm going to spin around so that you can still see me. Knees are to the left. Shoulders are rotating to the left. Nice little spinal twist here. Left hand is on the floor. Look out over your left shoulder. And take a couple of breaths here. Drop your chin to the chest and go ahead and trace a little half moon across the chest. Inhale right back to center with your head and your shoulders, but you're going to take your top hand and place it on your pelvis. So the bottom hand, you might have to move it further out, or you may even want to come down onto your elbow. So I'm going to place my elbow on the block, and we're just going to rock a little forward and back with the top hip. My front knee is bent, my bottom knee, top knee is bent, whatever you want to call it, back knee. And the legs are not overlapping, right? But I'm taking the pelvis itself and I'm rolling it forward and back and forward and back. If this is a tender spot for the hip that's on the bottom, you can stuff your blanket or your towel roll under there. And we're going to lower all the way down. So the block is a really nice thing to have here as a little pillow for your head. But if you have an actual pillow, that would probably be even nicer. So front knee, by the way, which is my bottom leg, is about 90 degrees in front of me. And the shin, the knee is like at 90 degrees and the hip is 90 degrees. No big deal if it's not, but something like that. You're going to take your top leg, knee is also bent, and notice that as you lift it up, the knee likes to drift forward, right? Place your top hand on your abdomen and start to pulse this top leg behind you. So we're getting into the front of our thighs. And this particular position is always really, really humbling for me as somebody who did a lot of hip opening over her life. I find that it's just, it's just like doesn't go very far, right? No matter how much I've lunged earlier in the day. A couple other things. For me, I'm working on keeping the sole of my foot to kind of stamp or imaginarily stamp the wall behind me. But you're welcome to let your foot go down. It's not a bad thing to allow your body to be in this sort of more organic movement. And so keep stamping the wall behind you with this bent knee, this bent top knee. And we've been at it for a while. So if you're getting tired, that's a good thing. You're going to straighten out the leg and just lower the leg down. If you already feel a stretch, you can hang there. You can also straighten your top arm. Reach it opposite direction. Lift your ribs a little from the floor. And then rise all the way up and we'll take it to the other side. You might be in a situation where you can roll over, but for me, I'm going to actually flip over so you guys can still see me. Let's start with either the opposite hand, so the back hand kind of rooting down onto the floor, or the forearm, right? Top hand is going to the top of your pelvis, and we're just going to rock a little forward and back. Remember, legs are not overlapping. Just rocking a little forward and back. From here, all I'm doing is lowering down onto that same side. So now my top leg is my left leg, and I'm going to place my hand on my abdomen. The reason why I'm putting my hand on my belly is so that I know I'm not doing like a big back bend here, or what I like to call a big club move, right? So it's not a big dance move. I'm just pulsing that top foot back, and I'm noticing if this side feels any different from the first, which it does a little bit, right? So pay attention if one side is easier than the other. I actually feel a lot less coordinated on this side. Just hanging out with breath. Last couple of repetitions. We're going to reach this leg back straight out behind, onto the yoga mat. It's not really behind you, maybe the tiniest bit behind you. And then top arm, flip it up and reach this gorgeous stretch through the full body. Release the arm, release the leg, and then pretty please come onto your back. I want you to have your block within arm's reach. And on your back, we're going to practice a couple different ways to bridge. So you may have heard that there's this correct way to bridge in yoga class, which the classical way that it's taught, we'll go ahead and do this together, is to have your heels in close enough that your fingers are touching your heels, and to have your feet about hip distance apart or sitting bone distance apart. The next thing that I've classically heard is to really lift your chest. So we're working to lift the chest to the chin, and then we raise up from here. As I practice this version of bridge, I feel it almost 100% in my thighs. Not 100% because I also feel it a little bit in my low back. So my low back muscles are working very hard to sort of boost me up from the bottom, and my thigh muscles, my quads, are working really hard to sort of suspend me from the top. Lowering down, let's experiment with various kinds of bridge. Walk your feet out so that they're actually a little bit in front of your knees. Unconventional, but try it with me. Flatten your back so the front of the pelvis is going to rock up and the back's going to get flat in the ground. And then I want you to rise up, trying to really lead from the tailbone and from the underside of the buttocks, right? So like that gluteal shelf. You're going to lift up here, knees to shoulders in a straight line, and just breathe. And where I feel it now is in my glutes. I actually feel it a little bit even in the arches of my feet, sort of some of the muscles that are preventing my knees from dropping in, sort of lifting up through the inner arches of the feet. And I don't feel any compression in my upper back. I'm not trying to lift from my chest. And I really don't feel my low back very much working here. It's probably working some, but I feel my abdominal area at least as much as my low back. Lower yourself down vertebra by vertebra. So many great ways to bridge. Walk your feet back in, and we're going to stick the belly up to the sky. Let your belly button rise up. Squeeze your shoulder blades out from underneath of you, and then rise up here. I feel it a little bit more distributed from my low back to my glutes to my thighs, but I'm also kind of letting my knees split out, which allows my glutes to activate. If you take your block, lower down, stick your chest up, raise up, you'll probably feel it a little less in your glutes and a little bit more in your thighs. This is a bit of a projection, but I am just telling you kind of the anatomic probability. Lower down, let your knees go out again. Rise up. Oh, rise up with the chest first, then rise up. And now see if you feel it more in your glutes. In general, if you are somebody who has tight thighs, you want to feel these yoga movements more distributed in the backs of your legs and in your glutes. And lower, everybody lower down, nice and slow. My absolute favorite way to bridge is to do a segmental bridge. As we've already kind of established, it's really helpful to have your knees apart a little bit to activate the back body, your glutes in particular. So when I teach bridge with a block between the legs, I actually teach it with the middle distance, like not the skinny version, so at least the middle, if not the wide. So today we're going to do the wide distance between the block between the legs. Feet are just a bit more narrow than the block so that you get that external rotation of the hips. And then my favorite way to practice, feet are out in front of the knees, front hip points up, and we're just going to try to segmentally, vertebra by vertebra, like peeling a sticker off its back, rise up, and then lower down. Flatten your back, lift from the tailbone, rise it up, and lower it right back down. A couple more of these. Last one. You can go more slowly than me. I've done these for a long time, and I really just like that sort of rolling up and down, almost massage-like quality to the back. Set your block to the side, draw your knees to the chest, scoop your hands over your knees. We'll give the low back a little bit of massage by circling. And then drop your knees over to one side, arms out into a T shape. No big deal here, just a couple of breaths, nothing specific, just a lazy twist. And then let's take a lazy twist to the other side. So drop your knees in the other direction. Don't worry if your shoulders stay down. No big deal if they do or don't. Back through to center, knees to center. You can come up any way you like. I'm going to teach you how to rock and roll up. So use your legs to leverage yourself up to sitting. And then the same thing we did in the beginning. Drop your knees a little side to side, hands behind you. As your knees go to the right this time, we're going to ramp up a little bit. Keep your left foot flat to the floor. Right hand down to the ground, and feel free to just mirror me, whatever I'm doing, if the whole right and left thing doesn't work for you. Tuck this bottom foot under, rise up. It's a little bit of a cross between a lunge and a side plank. And we're going to lower down. We're going to do this 5 times total. Inhale, reach, pelvis forward, exhale down. What you should feel as we do this is a bit of a stretch across that bottom thigh. And I believe we have one more. So big reach, big exhale, take it to the other side. Bottom knee is bent, top foot is flat. If you've got your left knee bent and kind of shin resting on the floor, it's your left hand on the floor, okay? And the top elbow starts in this hugged in position, and then we reach it up and down. So it's really all about pressing the pelvis forward, moving into that side plank quality. And I believe we have one more. So reach it up, lower down, and then go ahead and grab your block. And I'm going to encourage you to sit on your block if you happen to have one. From here, your bottom shin should be fully resting on the floor, okay? You can have your toes curled under on this bottom leg too, and the top foot is going to be out a little bit with the knee pretty much right over the ankle. Take a little bit of rocking here where your torso goes between the two knees, like a bit of a gateway. And then from this position, we're going to rock, shift over so that the weight lands on that back shin, and come right back down. Shift forward, By the way, feel free to do this at whatever angle works for you. I'm showing with my knee out to the side, but you could also just as easily do this, for example, with the block in a slightly higher position and your foot to the outside of the block versus the inside. So do what you need to do, right? As you go forward and back, you're going to get a little bit of thigh action engagement in the front leg and also thigh stretch in the bottom leg. When you're ready, come on down and let's switch sides. We're going to come back to this. If you can do the whole thing without the block and without your hands, great. But I don't have any bonus points for anybody. It's all just a practice, right? I heard the phrase this week, and I loved it so much, which is, we are all temporarily as able-bodied as we will be, right? So just a humbling reminder of whatever able-bodiedness you bring to the practice today. We're honoring that, we're appreciating that, we're recognizing how fleeting it is in the big scheme of things. So speaking of just modifications for stuff, if you need to, you can also punch down with the arms and come forward, but it's going to do less to strengthen your legs. So come back to your starting point. You're either going to have your bottom leg foot inside of the block or outside of the block, and your trunk is leaning between the legs up and down. Perfect. The next time you come on down, lean forward, and we're going to start to move up like all the way to stand from here. So lean forward, have your hands on the floor if you need to. Adjust your leg as needed. So now I've got all of my knees and legs pointing in the same direction. And then rise up to half kneeling. You can stay here for a moment, just stretching out the front of this standing leg by pressing your pelvis forward. And then as you're ready, if you feel comfortable, go hands-free. If not, you can put your hands on your front knee. Rise up to a little bit of a lunge. Taking advantage of the fact that I've got my side to the camera, let's go ahead and lift through center, legs apart, and then pivot to the other side. So you're in a soft lunge on the other side. In the Kripalu tradition, we would call this crescent lunge. Don't worry if your back knee is fully straight. I'm more interested in sort of the length, three-dimensional length across your torso. And up, and over, and up, and over, and up. And then just in standing, have your feet nice and wide apart. Start to shift your pelvis a little side to side. Let's talk about something that some of you guys might be noticing right now, which is the little hip pops. Any little hip pops that you might be feeling are a sign that that joint has an instability, has a quality of instability to it. It doesn't mean it's the end of times and you need a hip replacement. It just means that there's a catch, and that catch isn't contained by three-dimensional strength around the hips. I have a lot to say around hips and hip strengthening, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, you can look up what I have to say on that. But as far as this going, in theory, there shouldn't be any pops, snaps, crackles in the hips as we just go side to side. That's in theory. Pivot back to your original lunge, the direction from which you stood up. Lower that back knee gracefully down towards the floor, however close you can get, and then straighten that back leg up. So we're going to work that back knee towards the floor and straighten it. Let me offer a couple different options. So for those who are just a little tender in the knees, you can put your floor is hard, you can put your blanket there, and you can lower all the way down and all the way up. If just getting down and up feels incredibly awkward to you, you're going to have the block to give yourself a little bit of more easeful transition. bring the floor to you, right? The next time you straighten your leg, come all the way into your version of crescent lunge today. Doesn't have to be a big back bend, but it can be a little bit of a back bend. Heart lifts. Try to three-dimensionally lift your ribcage away from the pelvis. And then palms over the heart. We are going to lower all the way back down to the ground with that back knee. See if you can slow down that motion, even if it is a little bit awkward. Pivot on that back leg. Lower yourself down as close as you can to the floor. So feel free to have your block here rather than sit on your heel like I'm doing. And then we're going to take it to the other side. At any point, if you need to put your hands on the floor to readjust, feel free to do that because it can be a lot of pressure on the legs. So all the knees facing the other direction now. Raise it up, find your way to your lunge. Remember, you can do this with your hands on your knee as needed. And we're going to find that little pulse up and down. If you can go lower, go lower. What we're working on is called an eccentric. So we're engaging this back thigh muscle, even as the muscle itself is elongating. And last one, rise up, straighten your back leg, come into your version of your crescent lunge. You'll notice that I almost never teach the 90-degree position at the front leg. And one of the big reasons for that is not that the front leg can't handle it, it's that it's basically pulling and yanking on your back leg and your low back to a pretty extreme position. Full breath here, really lifting your ribcage out of the pelvis, not going into an extreme position, hopefully. Palms over the heart, rise up, spin your toes back to the front, getting into our thighs. So adjust your feet because we're going to do a little side lunge. Now that we've got our hips all warmed up from the side to side stuff we did earlier, drop down, shift your hips back, and raise up. In yoga, this is known as skandasana. You can float your arms the same side where you are lunging. And this practice is very much a hip hinge, where your hips go way back, your weight goes way into your heels, your center of gravity goes over the foot, or at least almost over the foot, where you're lunging. There's a million different ways you could do this, I'm sure, but this is the foundational lateral lunge. Toes turned out just a little bit, whatever's comfortable for you. Let's do one more time, each side. I don't remember which side I started on, so we'll just call that a wrap. Bring your heels, toes together. And then in standing, grab onto something as needed because we're going to shift our weight onto the left foot and just kick the butt with the right. So bring the heel up as close as you can to the hips. And what you might feel as you do this is you might feel a little bit of a stretch on the front of the thigh. If you have the ability, you're going to bring your heel to the outside of the hip, then the center, and then to the inside. So I'm going to do my best to show you what that looks like. So here's the heel to the outside, here's the heel straight to the center, and then here's the heel kind of to the inside of the hip. So you're getting to slightly different angles. Let's just do about 5 to 10 more of those active butt kicks. You'll notice that this is a part of a classical yoga pose known as Natarajasana or bow pose, where you have to grab your feet, open up the front of the hip, and then move into a back bend from there. We're not going to do that today, but just want to show how this is like a component of these other really beautiful yoga shapes. Grab onto the wall with the opposite hand, and same thing with your other leg. So kick your butt, lengthen out through the front of the thigh. Earlier we were doing the eccentric action. of engaging the muscle as the muscle itself was lengthening. And now we're doing something called reciprocal inhibition. So we're opening up the front of the thigh by activating the opposite muscle. Make sure to get the outer hip, the inner hip, and then straight in. So we're working all of the fibers of our hamstrings, and we're lengthening all of the fibers of the front of the hips. Good. Find your way back to neutral. Take a little fold from the hips. Feet shoulder distance apart, toes turn out as much as feels good to you. And then keeping your spine really nice and neutral, you're going to drop down into a squat. Imagine there's a chair behind you. So this is known in yoga as Utkatasana, right? So Utkatasana, you can have the block between your legs if you'd like, or you can also just really focus on even strength, even muscle activation, inner thigh, outer thigh. Connect to breath. And then stand up. As you stand up, engage through the glutes, rise through the arms, take a gentle yoga back bend in standing, and then exhale, fold it forward, coming into your forward standing fold. Shake it out in your forward standing fold. If your hands don't come to the floor like mine do, that's okay. Just grab opposite elbow. You can swing your body in a way that forms a figure 8. And this is a really nice, gentle way to rock side to side. Bring your hands to the knees. Stack, roll, rise it up. And then inhale, arms up. Exhale, palms together over the heart. Shift your right foot forward, left foot back. Inhale, crescent lunge. Exhale, palms together over the heart. Lean forward 45 degrees. We're going to find that Utkatasana, that squat in the front leg, and we're going to bring the back leg up to meet it. So use your arms, whatever you got to do. Bring that back leg up and then send it back. Bring the back leg up and send it back. So I'm doing this dramatic action with my hands because I feel like it gives me some moral support. Last one, bring it up. Find your Utkatasana. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, fold in half. This time as you fold, shake out your legs. You can just shake one and then the other, or you can bounce both of them together. Rise up, vertebra by vertebra. Try to engage the same segmental rising up that we did in bridge. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, palms over the heart. Left foot stays forward, right foot's going to step back. So lunge, crescent lunge on the opposite side. Inhale, arms up. Find your expression of crescent lunge. You might feel a little bit across the front of that right hip. Palms together over the heart. Lean it forward 45 degrees. This is actually a really important functional position right here, okay? So what I want you to be able to return to your default is a neutral spine. And what I'm working on is making sure I don't look forward, I don't look down. I'm staying neutral even into the neck part of the spine. Back leg comes forward and back, forward and back. We meet in Utkatasana, we step it back. We meet, we step. Working this left thigh. Last one, bring it in. Arms rise up. Find your version of Utkatasana. You can be a little bit out of a neutral spine now. And then palms together over your heart, reset to neutral. Open your feet nice and wide. Let me show you this with the block. So option to lower down your hands to the block, which then can kind of help you to squat or to just come down through a squat. So wherever you end up, a couple of breaths. Good. And then let's all make our way to the floor. Take a seat. on your block with your legs out in front of you. And we're going to take a little bit of a new innovative approach. So we got into the thighs a bit earlier as far as lengthening and strengthening. And there are two muscles in the quads, in this area at the front of the thighs, that also, they cross not just the knee, but also the hip, your sartorius and rectus femoris. So these two muscles are co-contracting when you lift your leg up, along with, of course, your main hip flexors. So we're going to lift, we're going to section one leg in, lift it up, tightening, 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 and then lower. And then other leg, suction it in, meaning like actually imagine you could deepen it into the socket, lift it up. Don't worry if your knee stays straight, and lower. First side suction and lift, lower. Also, do allow your spine to go into a little bit of rounding here. You can rock to the back of your sitting bones. That's not cheating. Let your breath be as natural as it can possibly be. Sit up on anything as high as you need to be able to do this within reason. And last one each side, we're going to do a 5, 4, 5-second hold. Lower, 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 and then other side. So suction, 5, 4, 3, 2. The arms help, I promise you. And lower down. And you do want your block nearby, but now you're going to set yourself up in picnic sit the way we did in the very beginning of our practice. So blocks within arm's reach, hands to the front of the knees, and then rock to the back of your sitting bones, again, the way we did in the beginning of the practice. Big exhale, lower yourself down, vertebra by vertebra, all the way down into the ground. Bend your knees, feet flat in front. Open your knees wide, activate your glutes. I'm drifting up. Activate your glutes to lift your hips, and then pretty please slide your block under your pelvis. And the off chance that you don't have a block, not everybody does, you can put like a firm throw pillow or maybe a couple of firm throw pillows under your hips here, okay? Just reach your right leg out. Already, if you feel your back really arching to the sky, you have some tight hips, okay? So maybe don't straighten your leg completely if your back is really arching up. But if you can straighten your leg, not have your back arch up too much, we're gonna lift and lower the leg from here. Adjust your block so that it's not digging in anywhere too much, and also so that it's not either boosting your leg up or preventing it from lowering down. Little hip flexor strengthening. And then draw a big circle with this leg, trying to keep your trunk as neutral as possible. I think I'm stating the obvious, but when your leg is moving, when your hip is moving, when you're walking, your trunk is always naturally moving. It's absolutely, and we'll give this leg a rest, it's absolutely normal to have like movement in your whole body if your legs are moving. I straightened out my left leg now, staying connected to my abdomen, lifting and lowering that left leg. But for the purposes of what we're working on right here, right now, it doesn't do much good to have your spine, wherever you're the most flexible, take over all the movement for the hips. Hips are a big joint. We want to train them to do the work for us. So start with the circles of that leg. Notice that your trunk is going to accommodate a little bit, but don't let your spine go into a big back bend here, especially as the leg drops down. Switch the direction of the circles, just to keep your neurons firing and spicy. And then lower down. Feet go wide. You can just rest here in this supported bridge for a moment, connecting to breath. Lift the hips. Release your block. Let's lower onto the belly and mimic something that we did in standing. Bend one knee and kick your butt 5 to 10 times. You want to be able to go to the inside and the outside of the hip. And you also want to be able to do this with your leg, your foot pointed or flexed. Release, shake it out. Legs can splay apart a little bit here. Again, this misconception sometimes in the yoga world is that we have to keep things very geometric and linear, and that's just not necessary. Bend your other knee and bring the heel in close to the hip. One of the things you might notice in this face down position as opposed to standing is you might notice like a little more concentrated sensation in your low back. If that's the case, then I really want you to press your pelvis down into the floor and draw your navel in a little bit, just temporarily. We'll go back to our soft belly breathing in a moment. From here, hands by the side. Float the legs, float the chest. My hands aren't pushing at all right now. Just a locust pose to activate the back body. Rise to neutral table. Rock a little front to back, side to side. And then please give yourself as much cushion as you would like for your knees. Walking your hands out to a little bit in front of your shoulders, or if your hands are not keen on taking a bunch of weight, you can lower down onto your forearms. We're going to set the block behind one leg. This is a bit torturous. You already know where I'm going with this, I bet. Squeeze the calf into the back of the thigh, and then just start to lift and lower. This works your glutes, helps to open up the front of your hips. Again, the aim is to keep the torso as stable as possible here. It's actually a little easier to keep the torso stable when you're on your forearms versus on your hands. So experiment with those two positions. And then start to draw a circle here. If you get a cramp at all, lower down, use your fist in your hamstrings, kind of pound it out, and then just get back on the bandwagon. Last circle or two. Lower. Transition to the other side. Squeeze, lift, circle, breathe. And actually, let's start with some pulses just to stay consistent. You guys are doing great. Ending with your circles. Last few. Excellent. Knees down. Block to the side. Toes together. Knees apart. Come up into kneeling. Please bring your hands to your glutes. Squeeze your glutes. Press the pelvis a little forward. Shoulders back. Back of the neck long. Chin down. Historically, in a yoga class, I would always have taught Ustrasana or camel pose from here. But I actually find that most of us don't really need that deep back bend. What we need is just this gentle stretch at the front of the hips. So shift a little side to side, thinking of connecting, drawing in. So your rib cage is actually sliding back a little bit if that's at all possible for you. It's a very subtle movement. Breathing into the back body. keeping your glutes active. And then we're going to experiment a little bit just like we did with bridge, but this time with a block. So notice where you feel it, and there's no judgment one way or the other. There's no right or wrong. When you have the block in the skinny position between your legs, do you still feel your glutes? Do you still feel your core? Do you still feel a stretch at the front of your hips? We're going to turn the block to the middle position. The thing is, the block could just hang there, or you could squeeze it. So I do want you to try to squeeze it. Glutes forward. Notice if this activates slightly different musculature for you. And then maybe try in the wide position as well. There's no right or wrong. This is all just an experiment to notice what gives you the most freedom at the front of your hips. For most of us, it's probably going to be with the knees wide, but we might also want to train with just that slightly less wide version of the block, or at least that position of the legs at distance apart, so that you can get a little reach and stretch across the front of the hips. Big breath in, release. Block off to the side, and go ahead and set your blanket to the side. Come back onto your back, starting from the picnic sit, and see if you feel comfortable segmentally rolling down. If it doesn't feel good to have your arms out in front of you, you can also drag yourself down, kind of using your elbows on the ground. Knees to chest. Gentle rocks. Full breath in, full breath out. I always enjoy coming full circle within the context of a yoga class. Yoga is union. We recognize Shavasana as this little death, this little corpse pose at the end of the practice. So it's a closure of our time together. So allow your knees to drop over to one side and just take a couple of breaths. There's no performance, there's no right and wrong. Just do whatever feels good. Drift your knees almost effortlessly to the other side. Arms wide, head heavy. And bringing the chin to neutral and the knees to neutral, rock a little side to side. I invite you to take any final movements you might want to make. So if you're feeling like taking a final bridge pose, traction your spine, lower down, option to roll up your blanket and place it under your thighs. You could also join me in sitting up for meditation to close the practice. Wherever you are, we're allowing our minds to stay fully present. They love going into the future or the past. So try to stay really right here, right now. Full breath in. Exhale, eyelids get heavy. Find a bit of alignment, any final alignment that you need to seek. Ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips. Breath is easy. Limbs are heavy. Any tension you might be holding in the face, let it go. In the jaw, let it go. If you get any temptation to wiggle or scratch, I invite you just to notice it. Notice if it's necessary. Do the action if so. And also notice if that sensation passes. There's a metaphor there, and that metaphor, just to kind of state the obvious, is that so much of life rocks us, rolls us, crashes into us in a way that can make us want to react. But if we pause and breathe into it, a lot of times that initial anger response transmutes, it changes. It's not that anger is bad, or it's not that our initial reactions are always bad, but that they may not always be conscious, and they might not always be the highest version of ourselves, expression of ourselves that we want to cultivate in this lifetime. So we breathe into that awareness, that spaciousness. Aware of all the little fleeting desires to wiggle, adjust, move, shift. Can we be in stillness and just observe? Just a couple more breaths in stillness. Enjoy them. Invite your next breath to bring movement into your fingers and into your toes. And there is absolutely no rush if you want to stay longer in Shavasana or in meditation. If you're in the zone right now, turn off this device. And if you're ready to wake up with me, draw some circles with ankles or wrists. From your back, draw your knees to your chest. And slowly roll to one side. Pressing up slowly to seated, we'll bring our hands one over the heart, one over the belly. Tactile feedback for our breath. embracing its three dimensionality, front, back, side, side, up, down. And we'll bring our palms together over the heart in gratitude for this lovely community, far and wide. I appreciate all of you so very much. Feel free to bow if you feel like it, and take any other expression that feels good to you. Thank you so much for being here with me today.